Welcome back, everybody. This is your host, Shanti. Don't forget the Manti. Welcome back to Room 104. I am here with a very special guest today. Jesus Christ, shut up. The man who always has a plan, captain of the ship, Anthony Abaci, the face founder of Miaseen Inc.
Oh, one of the many faces. Oh, God. This is quite the intro.
Of course, I got to take care of my guests, whoever comes on.
Yeah, man. You got all the different parts. Yeah.
December 28th, 2020. The channel is officially on YouTube.
Yeah.
What made you go down this road into media and production? Was it something that you wanted to do when you were a kid? Is it something that you kind of picked up later on?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, my parents showed me the movie Cinema Paradiso. Have you ever seen it? It's an Italian movie.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. No, I've never heard of it.
It's okay. Don't worry. It's that good. That'll make you cough.
Right.
Yeah, so it's this really charming movie. It's about this little boy growing up in this small village, small town in Italy. And it's an Italian film. And
right.
His father dies in World War I or World War II, and he befriends the projectionist in the local movie theater and basically helps the projectionist put the reels for the projector, all this kind of stuff. And he basically learns about life in the movies. And the movie is about this little boy growing up into a teenager and then into an adult and revisiting his whole life. And you cry and you laugh, and there's love and there's heartbreak and there's mourning, and like, I'm like a 15-year-old high school hopeless romantic kid, and I'm like feeling everything. I'm like, I couldn't like resist it. And I was like, whatever that is, I want to be a part of that, like that feeling. I grew up in like San Francisco Bay Area in a town called Los Gatos in the South Bay. And, it's not like a film industry there. I never thought that there were people that made movies. Like, you hear about other filmmakers like, I always watched it behind the scenes. And I never did that. I was like, what is this garbage? Like, what I mean? Get me to the other.
Really?
When I was a little kid, I was never interested in that at all.
Got you.
I think storytelling was something I was drawn to. Like Armenians, you sit around the table for how many hours as a kid, like listening to everyone tell the stories. And I think I was always interested in that. And my parents always put me around adults growing up, right? So adults do a lot of stories. Kids, you imagine stories.
Of course.
Adults, they tell stories. So I think I had always gravitated and been surrounded by constant storytelling of some sorts.
Right.
My parents, being good Armenian parents, were like, entertainment, I don't know. Because at the time I thought I wanted to be a director, not a producer. Right. Nor did I even know what the difference was.
Yeah.
And so even though they were a little hesitant and everything like that, they were more hesitant in the regards of like, we want to make sure that you're successful, right? And we don't know that world to help you, right? A lot of it came from just having to make projects with my friends, like any chance I could get. But my parents, even though they were telling me, hey, maybe to apply to business school, what about going to psychology, kind of like yourself?
Right.
They also told me I could do anything I set my mind to, you know what I mean? And so I really put forth like, okay, how do I get this done? Like, okay, there's film schools. Like, what are good film schools? I want to try to figure out a way to get to film school. Okay, I got to get my SAT scores up. I got to get my grades up, my GPA up. A teacher told me that there was a local television station, like a stone's throw away from my high school. He's like, you should go see if there's an internship there.
Right.
And, you walk in and, if you've ever been to like a local public television station for a local channel, part of your soul gets sucked away a little bit. Yeah. But these guys were great, man. They really let me, come in after school and learn how to edit, learn what the equipment was, and they wanted free labor, right? So
yeah, of course.
And yeah, even at that, I just kind of fell in love with being able to work on stuff, and they did a lot of new stuff, and eventually they started doing more sports stuff. So actually, even when I was in high school, I had a weekly live sports show that lasted 15 minutes at noon on Fridays, and I brought my buddy in it. He was my co-anchor, and we would run at lunch to the studio. We were like, lunch got off at 11:45. We'd get to the studio, like quickly try to eat lunch, and you would wear suits, right? But you really just have your shorts underneath.
You have.
So you have like basketball shorts on, and then like I'll try to find a photo to send you, like ridiculous. And you have like a shirt and a jacket on, and we would do this live show that we'd work on the whole week. It'd be 15 minutes, and then it would end at 12:15. I had the first bell ring at 12:20, and we were back to being high school.
Wow.
I think all of 3 people watched it. I think it was my mom.
That's amazing.
And whatever geriatric patient fell asleep with the TV on.
You have to start off somewhere, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I had 3 views on my videos when I was younger, and it was just me, and me. So, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. So then I was applying to film schools thinking I want to be a director. And I really didn't get in anywhere. And so I thought everyone wanted to go to USC, right? That's like the big mecca. Didn't get in there. Didn't get in NYU. Even Chapman, I applied to for directing, and I didn't get in. But they let me apply to my second choice major, which was producing, and they let me in. And so, I didn't get in anywhere else. And so I was like, this is Chapman is one of the top film schools in the world.
Yeah,
and it's an amazing program.
Yeah, I have a couple of friends who go to Chapman.
Yeah, I'm very blessed that was like God was looking down on me, and especially putting me in the producing program, which was something I didn't know much about. I was thinking like, I could always transition directing, but I fell in love with producing and just being like the one that has to push the train up the mountain,
right?
Having to bring everybody together. That was more in my personality and the way my brain worked than maybe the directing side. So I kind of went to Chapman knowing like, hey, wasn't supposed to get in. Like, I'm not supposed to be here. And there's a lot of kids that were a lot more talented than me, that had more skills than me, like knew how to do stuff that I didn't know how to do, that I wasn't exposed to where I grew up. And I was like, I guess got to work harder than everybody else to be just as good as them. That was sort of the thought process. Everything kind of fell into place. And my friend and I, we produced a web series our freshman year. We raised money for it, crowdfunded money for it. No one thought we can do it, but we kind of got together all the freshmen that were ambitious like us, that were all doing different things. And we made this web series. And we won a student Emmy for best scripted series. We were like the youngest people nominated. And from there, that kind of took everything off and kind of solidified like, oh, I can do this, even though who cares, Emmy for Mamie, but it was a personally validating to the stuff that I was doing at a young age, but also like, okay, like I could maybe take this further. Like, I think it gave me that confidence boost to be able to go and shoot for more. And so I think that's kind of how all the media stuff started. So it was
So you've been basically just tapping into this since you were in high school.
Yeah, so I was talking about this with a friend the other day,
and
we were talking about how we've been doing this for about 11 years.
Wow.
And we were talking about that versus other generations, where a lot of generations don't get a shot at even seeing a film camera, until they were 26. I'm 26
That
right
was
now.
me. That was me when we did the whole show. I never got to see a professional camera. I mean, I saw it like when we take school tours, or like, when we went to high school. In my school, they used to take into LMU or like places like that. And once in a while, they'd have like a program, like a drama program or whatever the case may be. Even at CSUN, when I was doing my undergrad, I saw cameras on the side. I never got to be on it. I never got like an introduction on what the different cameras are. So when I was working on the project with you guys, it was very eye-opening, and I almost felt like giddy.
Yeah.
Did you feel like that giddiness whenever you had first started your web series? Did you have that?
Yeah. So I was very privileged to be able to grow up where there was access to this stuff. Again, my family had worked hard to put me in a position where I could even go to a school like Chapman. Right. My parents worked very hard for me to be able to go to that.
Yeah.
I went to a good public school in high school. Was able to be in a community where they even had a public television station to be able to even get that experience.
Yeah. Because a lot of kids
don't,
that.
right? And so, but I took that as like, okay, cool, this is my opportunity. I have to seize it, right? Instead of sitting on my ass. So I think I became giddy about it when you see the like kind of the footage later. But it's funny. I have a very odd relationship with the process of filmmaking. I love the process of it. Like if you were to ask me if I'd rather watch things on a deserted island or make things on a deserted island,
you would make them.
I would make them. I rarely watch things back. Like Armenian Dating Show, since approving the final edits, like I haven't watched the series. Like
you haven't even
like
been tempted to
unless I'm like with somebody. In terms of the giddiness, I think the giddiness that I get is actually from my favorite part about filmmaking is the collaboration part, right?
It's always the most
working with whether it's talent or the camera team or the grip and electric team or the makeup and hair team, depending on what the show or project requires. I think I get giddy when you're trying to figure out something, and because with filmmaking, there's no path, there's no rule book, right?
Right.
Like the Armenian Dating Show, like Alexa and I and Zoe, like we had to craft what that direction was that eventually became the show. Like it came out of thin air if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
And so, but the giddiness that I get is when you're trying to figure out something and then you do, and you look to the other person like, shit, like I think this is it. Like that's the giddy part.
I've said this to you maybe 1,000 times. He knows how many times I've actually said this. We've done it. I used to, in between takes, right before we took a break, I'd be like, Tony, you know, we got this. We got this on lock. You know, you're doing a great job. I mean, he knows how many times I've went up to the different cast, you know, members of the crew, and I was very, very appreciative of the opportunity that was given to me. I guess
you were excited.
Yes.
I think you make it out now. I think in retrospect, you were appreciative, but you were appreciative because you were also excited to go on this journey, right?
Yeah, because it was new.
Yeah, and you, if you remember, I think because we were still getting to know each other, we were still even getting to know each other when we were making the show,
right?
Right, and so I think one thing that I laugh about in good humor is you didn't know who I was either, right? Just as I was getting to know you,
no clue.
So you didn't know the level that which my teams and our teams,
right.
and Zoe and Alexa and Aaron, our cinematographer.
Yeah.
And,
shout out to Aaron. Love you, bro.
I think that you didn't realize the level of professionalism that we have learned 100%. And occurred, and like the level of talent that the team has, and trickles down, and you know, a lot of filmmaking's problem solving on your toes. Like, okay, this happens, go to this thing. And so I think you were also a little starry-eyed at like, oh, there's this terminology, there's this, there's that. Yeah. Like, this is what this looks like. And that was kind of cute, you know? Yeah. And I think what I appreciated about you is that the moment and what we were doing was not lost on you, and you also conducted yourself in a very, so did the whole cast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you specifically carried yourself with a certain demeanor and class that
I appreciate that. I 100% agree with you on the fact that I was starry-eyed, because this was something that I was passionate about since I was like 4, 5, 6 years old. Like my parents and my family would kind of thrust me into the limelight to try to get me to perform, whether it was a scene from Shark Tale, whether it was a movie. I knew at age 7, I knew the entire script for Pink Panther from the beginning of the movie until the end.
Steve Martin one?
The Steve Martin one.
Yeah, the burger.
And especially Rush Hour 2.
Right.
From opening credits, I knew exactly the timing, when the first line happened, what happened here, the words that weren't even said. Like I remember the actions, how I would mimic that, and my parents, my family, extended family, like, you know how Armenian families get. There's like 60 of you in one room on New Year's Eve, and everyone was falling down laughing at just me doing me. One thing that when you said you held yourself with a sense of professionalism, I understood and I respected the field. That's, I think, one of the biggest things that some people either don't think about or they haven't really had the chance to think about. I knew that from the moment that we did our first interview, where you asked me, it was you, Alexa, and Zoe had not come into the Zoom meeting yet.
Zoe wasn't even on the team yet.
Yeah. Oh, she came later.
She came later. It was Olivia Ohanian.
Right.
Olivia Ohanian.
She was the one who sent me.
Yeah,
yes.
Out to you, yeah.
Yes. Which, again, shout out to Olivia. I'll say it to the end of my life. Olivia was the one who sent me.
Olivia was on our casting team in the beginning.
Yeah. She's great. I grew up with her. Kindergarten through 12th grade. Yeah. We were we went to AGBU together, and it was great. That's how I got into the show. That, again, kind of going back to the professionalism, I understood and I respected the field, and I knew that you guys had put so much time and so much effort into something. I didn't even cross my mind how many years it took you to come up with this concept and to like get the team behind it and to bring. So off the bat, I was like, people are coming. There's cameras. There's obviously a structure. So I'm going through not just one interview, 2 interviews, 3 interviews. And then the final interview, you kind of gave me the schedule, and I couldn't talk to anybody about the schedule. Like I had to sign waivers, like don't say this, don't say that. And I was like, okay, this is legit.
Yeah.
this is legit, and I want to be the best version of myself for this team.
Yeah.
More so about the preparation of the show, more so about preparation of Armenian Dating Show. Just how long did it take you to kind of set everything up before, like, you and I met through Zoom?
The idea of Miaseen came to me. The seed of the idea came in January of 2020.
Okay.
And then I started seriously fermenting on what it was around that time. And then in March of 2020, I realized that this was actually a good idea and better than most of the other crappy ideas I'd had.
Right.
And started seriously pushing on it and in exploring, like, okay, well, what could this be? And that's pandemic time, quarantine time.
Yes. Prime pandemic time. This was like level 1.
And as you know, the film industry shut down.
Yes.
So there's no work.
Yes.
One of the ideas that came out of the, quarantine, pacing around in my apartment alone, thought process was, okay, what could an Armenian dating show be? And then Alexa Demary, who's the co-creator of the show and my co-executive producer on the show.
Fantastic.
And also the casting director on the show who coordinated with you more than anybody to get you on the show. So I came to Alexa, who was really into reality TV, but she hadn't done a show before. And, through quarantine and everything, like, we had watched dating shows, within our pod.
Right.
We were watching like 90 Day Fiance and there was other ones and
Indian matchmaking.
Was one that came later. And so around that May time, I kind of I told Alexa, like, hey, I want to explore with this, like around that time. I think it was maybe more so like June, July. Where I kind of were serious, like, hey, like
2020
of 2020
okay.
Of like, hey, like, what could this show be?
Right.
And so we actually came up with a different format for the show that was completely different, that would never see the light of day, that in retrospect was not very good. Well, I think it kind of goes to any creative process. You have evolutions of the idea, and there's always a way that you can grow the idea. And sometimes you need, I really do believe in getting the bad ideas out. Like, whenever I'm stuck on something, I'm like, okay, like, or we're in a team meeting where we're stuck on a brainstorm, like, all right, who has like a bad idea? Let's get the bad ideas out. Because even though a bad idea, like, you'd be like, okay, I have a really bad idea and it's kind of funny bad idea, there might be a seed in that, right? That grows to the next thing. And that's what the initial brainstorming was. And even though that was one that we pushed on, there were so many other ones that we did. And what was really nice about working with Alexa, who is not Armenian, was she was like, okay, so like, you got to tell me more about being Armenian. And we would do like Zoom calls where she would just ask questions and I would just talk to her about what it was like growing up and what it's like to date in Armenian community and these different things. And it allowed me to revisit my whole Armenian experience through that, of which we were able to kind of start looking at the show in this new lens. And I think why our show was so precious was we had a combination of Armenian filmmakers and non-Armenian filmmakers working on it.
Right.
And the non-Armenian filmmakers obviously relied on us to give them context to certain things. But us Armenian filmmakers relied on the non-Armenians to see things that we took for granted, right? For example, I love that Zoe and Alexa really loved the idea of reading coffee cups, right? To me, I'd always like, the crazy auntie's the one who reads the coffee. And they were like, they should go on a date. It's like Armenian tarot card reading, right?
Yeah.
Like, you never know what's going to be said. I'm like, that's a great idea, And I was able to find somebody through Avo Kamburian, who was also one of our associate producers and our post-producer on the show, who knew Ani, who is the coffee cup reader in the show.
Yeah.
And we knew that, and then we learned that Ari Nazarian, who was one of the other singles on the show, loved coffee, and it worked out. It just worked out. Yeah, and Tasha's story on the show is kind of about her fate of where that's going to go, and it really worked out. But this is a long-winded to answer your story.
No, you're good.
These are the process that we were kind of going through. So then in July, August, actual Miaseen and the dating show was actually really going. It had become now, I'd done it during that time, it had become a company, right? At this point, but nothing was out yet. It was just like working on it. It was still just me.
Still 2020.
Still 2020.
Gotcha.
And so we're really pushing on it. Both Miaseen and the Armenian Dating Show. And then the 2020 war hits.
Yeah.
And, doing a dating show.
You have to pause it.
Or even an Armenian company on Armenian culture.
Yeah.
Armenian culture changed, or it adjusted overnight, right? The conversation shifted, the focus shifted. who wants to do any of this stuff when you're seeing like news on Twitter
right.
or like, you know, things on Instagram. So we sort of had to, I mean, Miaseen and myself, it was a very hard time both for the war, right? And it's quarantine, it's the US elections, like I'm trying
very
to start
hectic.
I'm trying to start a company. Now I don't know if like this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, how many conversations did I have about not doing it? I spent all this time on it. And you know, what's funny is a lot of Armenians told me I shouldn't do it. And all of my non-Armenian friends were the ones who said I should. And I think that balance and understanding why people said I should and why people said I should kind of help become and refine the focus of what it was. And so when the war started, you know, after the peace agreement and, on, you know, early November and everything, I was kind of like, you know what, like, because one thing at that time that we had actually, if you remember, we had an Armenian Dating Show casting Instagram page that Alexa ran and operated.
Yes.
So what was really cool about that was during the time of the war, a lot of people messaged that page being like, please tell me this is not a joke. Like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like during all this mess, you know what I mean? Like these terrible things that are happening, you know, war crimes are going on. People just wanted that place to have joy, right? A place for a release. Being Armenian is really hard work, right? And so I kind of took that as, okay, like, you know what? Maybe I need to refine a little bit. And that was already a big key element about love, generating love. Right? The name Miaseen, my mom helped me come up with it in like April of 2020 of like, I was like, Mom, I want something that feels like people can like love each other, right? And she was like, well, what about the word, you know, what about together?
Yeah.
And so, so from there, you know, we were able to be like, okay, dating show, like, let's actually push this. So, like, I know it's going to be sensitive. There's going to be some people not fucking with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like being reached out to, but you know, really, we actually didn't have any negative feedback from that. Maybe people whisper or whatever, but who cares? So then we reached out, we had a Zoom meeting with you in
January
2021. Of 2021.
Because in December, right when in the middle of the war stuff was going on, I kind of related to what you were saying because I was making sketch comedy videos on the side, and I know it's nothing close to what you're doing.
No, but it's still you're like, is this connecting? Like
100%. Ryan was here last week, and we said the same exact thing. When the war was going on, he was making videos, I was making videos, and he said something that was very, very relatable and very touching, and it was very, very real. Also, he said there was a point where when he was making videos, he felt like he had to get political.
Yeah.
He felt like he was doing a disservice by not pushing some of what was going on in the Nagorno-Karabakh war, the Artsakh war. He felt like he was doing a disservice to his community and his culture by not spreading any news on it. And that was the same thing that I felt. I had to make a decision, like an ethical decision. Okay, I have to stop making videos for whatever to be determined amount of time because I wanted to make sure that, you know, my people are actually taken care of. That the world needs to know what's going on. And there were times where I would have to balance between, okay, now people are too engulfed in this. I have to make something, you know, bright, something funny, something that can maybe not distract, but kind of lift people up from that dark, brooding, like depressing time. Because everyone felt it. If you're Armenian, you felt it. And I definitely related to what you were saying when you were like, okay, now I'm stuck between, do I make the show? Do I not make the show? And I think you touched on a very, very important thing. Armenians were telling you not to do it, and non-Armenians were telling you to do it. And the fact that while I do understand the culture, sometimes you do have to go against the grain in order to really, really push something that you really do believe in. So major props to you for not cutting it there, even though it would have been understandable, but you still went above that threshold of, I could possibly get shit for this. And it's crazy that like it wasn't just me and Ryan who were content creators, small-time content creators, that felt that way.
During that time, I think the thing that kept me through was right now it's hard. Right now I'm not right, but I did believe in the insight and what I believe to be true is that if you create media that's good, that's undeniably good, that everyone's going to be able to connect to it, right? And that doesn't happen in a day. You know what I mean?
No, it takes a while.
So you think about from July when we really started working on Armenian Dating Show, Alexa and I, until when it came out in November of 2021. That was like almost a year and a half that I was working on that show.
Yeah.
And then, you know, marketing it through, right? You know, you never know what's going to happen. Not only was I afraid, okay, people shitting on me, whatever, right? But if the show wasn't a success, right? What if the show is bad?
Yeah,
you know what
that's when it'll hurt.
And so
more.
that's kind of what also propelled me to when we had the old format. Like I was telling Alexa, I think we need to like revisit this.
Right.
And so, you know, her and I both went and watched other shows and did some deep thought. And for like one night, I just like poured myself like a glass of Johnny Walker that my friend Bailey and Shay gave me on the day of launch, and I never opened it. And I was like, oh, I'll drink this. And I watched a bunch of different dating shows, and I was doing a lot of studies and reading reports on like, okay, well, what do people engage with the most? And I read a report where on Twitter for like The Bachelor or Bachelorette, the highest like tweet storms were on when people were on a first date or some kind of first meeting, right? And then there was this other app that I was speaking with this woman who was working there, who was saying it was like a storytelling app, and the highest engagement on the app was blind dates, when someone was on a blind date.
Interesting.
So I was like, okay, taking this, like we should create a format where there are tons of blind dates, because I didn't want to make a trashy show.
Of course,
I didn't want people throwing,
you
know, I was already nervous about creating too much conflict between characters, because I wanted us to represent in the light that we are. You know, we're a very educated, forward-thinking, polite group of people, and sometimes we portrayed ourselves not that way. And so I was like, how do I create conflict? Okay, conflict is Sean's going to go on a blind date with somebody. What's going to happen, right? And so I was like, okay, well, I need more dates. And I was like, okay, well, what if they went on a blind date with the family first, like kind of old school, right? And so Alexa and I kind of, you know, worked on that. And the way that, you know, again, when Zoe was on the show, and Meryl, Ella, and Noor, who are our editors, and Abba, of course, was in the process, and so was Alik, was we edited the show in such a way where you actually got to meet the characters before the characters got to meet the character. Like before, like if you watch the show, before your dad and Menwa meet Natasha, right? Right before Natasha's about to walk in the door, we cut to meet Natasha. Right. So then as an audience member, you're able to start to form your opinion of, oh, do you think that this person and this person are going to mesh, right? Yeah. And you bring the audience in on something, right? And so those are type of techniques and tools that we brought into the show, so that also like that show could get out to other people, right? And I love when Armenians are like, oh my God, like, or non-Armenians, excuse me, are like, oh my God, is so-and-so still together from the show? And I know if they've watched until that part, they saw everything in episode 5 where we talked about Artsakh, right? Yeah. Everything in episode 6 where we got into why we have an Armenian dating show, right? Which honestly, because if there was a genocide, that we all had to disperse, and now we have to do this Armenian dating show to come, you know, still come together. Does that make sense?
No, 100. Yeah, I think that you outlined it beautifully. Kind of switching it up to like something more fun. What was like a really, really memorable moment throughout the entire process of the show? Or was like a funny moment, or there was something where I did, or something that someone from the crew members did? What was something that you were like, oh my God, this is fucking hilarious, and I'm probably never gonna forget this?
There were a lot of things. So you have to understand, when you guys are on your dates, me, Zoe, Alexa, and Abby, who was also an associate producer on the show.
I love you, Abby. I miss you.
So us four, and you know, whomever else, you know, was there, we're like in another room or hiding behind a corner with a little like, you know, 8-inch monitor with headsets on, watching your guys' date. Yep. And we love you guys dearly. You guys are weirdly like children, brothers, sisters to us. In this process where we all went through this process together. And so there were just so many times where you guys would say things, and in the moment, it just was so fun. Like in the context of everything going on. And also, like, you have to understand, we're like moving a million miles a minute, right? Yeah. Bro, when you said shrimp in your interview, like that was just like, like we just were like, oh my God.
I still get shit for that.
I know. People still tell me that's like the most like iconic line of current Armenian culture,
bro,
shrimp.
One of the stories that I had I talked about the other one on the live panel that we did during episodes 1 and 2, but there was one instance where we were doing testimonials.
Yeah.
We walked in, and this was right around the time. I think I had changed my hair 6 times, which I loved, by the way, that you guys maybe put on a hat just so it wouldn't show that.
He showed up with a haircut and
buzzed off.
but a duffel bag of clothes of his closet, and I had to pull out a hat, and we had 2 choices.
You're like,
Zoe was like, that one, not that. I think you had a pink one as well.
I had a pink one with the rose.
She's like, not the pink one. And then honestly, and I'm so glad Zoe said that.
I'm glad too.
So the haircut.
So I got the haircut.
Yeah.
And I pulled up, and this was, guys, imagine like a really big warehouse, okay? Because I know if you went to a Miaseen party, you know what the place looked like.
Yeah, we shot the testimonial. We shoot a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, you guys shot a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
And one of the big problems I remember you telling me about this place was the AC issue. My ass was like swamp ass. I felt bad for the chair at one point because it was fabric. I didn't want stains to pop up on there.
Yeah, I don't know if there were any stains.
We were sitting in that. I was sitting there, and I think I just finished like a testimonial. I think it was like 10-minute something. I went off. And then Tony's outside. He comes back in, and keep in mind, there were crows sitting at the telephone pole outside, and they kept like hitting the pole.
Oh yeah.
And Bree, our sound engineer, right? That's her title, right? Sound engineer?
Sound mixer.
Sound mixer. Shout out to Bree. She would be like, nope, plane. Nope, crow. You walked in. I think I'd finished everything. And then I think Zoe was asking me questions, Zoe the director. And then you were outside. You walk in. No warning. You just looked at me, and I think Zoe was like, any more questions? Y'all good? And then it's like, you just went, yeah. And you're from like far away. The mic didn't, I'm sure you guys have this as a blooper. You're like far away. And you go, yeah, Shant, I have one question. And I'm like laughing because I know something is going to.
Oh, no.
So he goes, do you eat ass?